One more very important concept is there, what is called as, which is very important, what is called as deficit. We have already discussed deficit, but since it is very important, explaining it again. Deficit. When there will be deficit? Deficit we are talking in relation to expenditure and receipts. When the expenditure is more than receipts, it results in deficit. Then when deficit happens, what you need to do? You need to borrow. Okay. Now, if the income or receipts is more than expenditure, what will happen? We'll talk in relation to budget. So if the expenditure is more than receipts, we call that budget is a deficit budget. Now this term is very important. Deficit budget means expenditure is more than, total expenditure is more than total receipts, it's a deficit budget. Okay. Now if the receipts is more than expenditure, we call it as a surplus budget. Very simple, surplus. So surplus happens when receipts is more than expenditure. Be very clear with this important concept. So now try to understand. For us, surplus is not important because our union budget is not surplus, it is a deficit budget. So we'll learn only about deficit. Now we'll learn very few different types of deficits in relation to union budget. One is budget deficit. It's there in your material. Page number, go and write it important there, page number 5 end or page number 6, just see the page number 5 end. Page number 5 end, there is a heading called deficit. Right there, very important. See, in the material itself, every part is not that important, but this part is very important. What is this deficit part? Write it, very important. Okay. Now, budget deficit, very simple. What is budget deficit? If the total expenditure is more than total receipts, we call it as the deficit. Budget is deficit budget or budget deficit. Second is revenue deficit. Revenue. So again, very simple. Revenue deficit. We are talking about revenue budget. In the revenue budget, if the revenue expenditure is more than revenue receipts, if revenue deficit happens when? Very simple. Revenue expenditure is more than revenue receipts. Very simple. Okay. Now, what is important for you is see the revenue deficit percentage of GDP. See, I told you everything is compared in relation to GDP. How much is, see, for us it's not the value of revenue deficit, it is how much is the proportion of revenue deficit to GDP. It has to come down. Rather, we have a goal of making revenue deficit zero. Why? What is the advantage of having revenue deficit zero? Revenue expenditure means what? Day-to-day expenditure, it's not creating any assets. So it's always good that at least it's a simple rule, at least your day-to-day expenditure have to be ensured. So day-to-day, at least the revenue deficit, the revenue expenditure has to be paid from the revenue receipts itself. So that's the idea of making revenue deficit zero or nil. Now here, during the UPA government time, to make, see, the international credit rating agency look into these factors. How much is the revenue deficit? How much is the fiscal deficit of a country? Along with the total debt. Now to make sure, see, I told you that here the grants given to states and union territory will go to which part? Grants to states and union territory is a revenue expenditure, yes or no? Now this grant is given by the sender to the state. Now what the state will do, like a son, he will use that money But if the father is strict, what the father will do? Ensure that I had given you money, ensure that you're taken money to buy books, show me your books. Then you'll say, I am not going to that part. So like that when the sender gives grant, the sender gives conditions. I am giving you this fund for this only. Ensure that you spend on that purpose only, not like anything else. So here, now once the state, after receiving grant from the sender, may use that fund for its own revenue expenditure, like paying their salary or something like that, or maybe use that fund for asset creation. We don't know. You getting the point? The grant received by the state government may use that money for some portion of that money may be using for asset creation. Yes or no? Now imagine Kerala government got a grant from the sender for 500 crore. Out of that 500 crore, 300 crore has been spent for revenue expenditure, pure revenue expenditure. 200 crore is used by the state to build some infrastructure. Now is it a asset creation? Yes. So the sender is claiming that, okay, so this is the new concept, what is called as effective revenue deficit. It's very important. What is called as effective. So sender is saying that, okay, the grant which we have given to the state, some portion have been used for asset creation. So this can't be used in where? In the revenue expenditure. So deduct it. So that is what is called as. So already revenue deficit I had discussed. What is that? Simple. Revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts. Now there is a new concept, what is called as effective revenue deficit. Effective revenue deficit. Now somebody asks you, what is this effective revenue deficit? It is nothing but you have to deduct from the revenue deficit minus the not full. What is that? That grant used by the state for asset creation. Grant used for assets creation can be deducted. Then what you will get? You'll get effective revenue deficit. It's there in the material. Just read the material. It's there in the. But understand that revenue deficit, and so what will happen when you consider effective revenue deficit? Revenue deficit will come down. Okay. So we have discussed two types of deficit. What is that? Budget deficit and revenue deficit. Now the most important one, the most important deficit which you are reading in the newspaper regularly, what is called as? It's called as fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is total expenditure minus revenue receipts plus non-debt creating capital receipts. What is fiscal deficit? See, I'll make it very simple. Now, what is the specialty of this formula? See, deficit is always expenditure minus receipts. Deficit is always expenditure minus receipts. So here, expenditure is what expenditure? Total expenditure. Receipts, here what all receipts is considered? The entire revenue receipts is considered. Yes or no? The entire revenue receipts is considered. Then what is taken from here? Non-debt creating capital receipts. Now tell me What are those non-debt creating capital receipts? Disinvestment. See, disinvestment is not creating any liability. What do you mean by non-debt? Debt means, see, debt, when we talk about debt, actually what does it mean? Debt creates liability. Debt creates liability. Non-debt means which will not create any liability. So that's why I call non-debt creating capital means no liability. So disinvestment results in no liability. The loans recovered by the central government. Here, what is this loans recovered? The loan given to states has been recovered. The principal is recovered. That is it a debt? It is not a debt. So it is also a non-debt. What about loan? Debt creating. So now tell me, actually what is missing here? Loan. It is only what is missing here? Loan. Now tell me what is for fiscal deficit? Nothing but how much borrowing. Fiscal deficit is nothing but the borrowing taken by the government for that financial year. What is fiscal deficit? The loan taken by the government for that particular financial year is the yes or no? What is left here? Now tell me, this is the total receipts. This is the total receipts. This is the out of this total receipts, and this is the total expenditure. What is fiscal deficit? This minus this. Now I'll tell you, I make it one more very clear. In India, I'll make it this one word I missed. In India, total revenue, total receipts and total expenditure will be the same. In India, what the finance minister will do? He will ensure that the total expenditure and total receipts will be the same. How he will do that? I already explained. If the total expenditure is, first he knows that the total expenditure is 20 lakh crore. How much it is? 20, not 20 lakh, 20 lakh crore. Imagine. Then he knows that 14 lakh he will get from revenue receipts and non-debt capital receipts. 14 lakh, which is not a liability. Then he thinks that, oh, 20 lakh is my expenditure. See, if I miss crore, leave it. Okay, 20 lakh crore as expenditure, 14 lakh without any liability I can raise. Now 6 lakh, what I have to do? I have to borrow, and that 6 lakh is the fiscal deficit. That 6 lakh is the fiscal deficit. Now whenever you hear the term fiscal deficit, now that's the pressure on the government. If the fiscal deficit to GDP increases, what does it mean? The government has taken new headache. Already interest payment is in lakh crore. The government is not trying to, government again what is it trying to do? It is again taking new loan. So what will happen to the interest payment component? It will rise or not? It will rise. So if you ask me, fiscal deficit, if somebody asks you, yaar, you are a civil service aspirant, you are reading newspaper regularly, what is this fiscal deficit? Very simple, yaar. It is the loan or borrowing taken by the government for that financial year. That's it. So this is fiscal deficit. That's why I see people how still, if you ask any civil service aspirant what is fiscal deficit, he will start total expenditure minus total receipts. No. Total expenditure minus. I have to check it. Yeah, very simple. Yeah, it's nothing but the borrowing of the government for that particular financial year. That's it. If you know that concept, it's very simple. It's about understanding the concept. It's very easy if you know the concept very clearly. So be very clear with that. Okay. So fiscal deficit is total expenditure. So don't by heart see, if you by heart it, you will get confused. I already told you, expenditure. When you hear the word deficit, it will be expenditure minus receipts. One part will be expenditure, other part will be receipts. Since you know that fiscal deposit are fresh loans and borrowings, so if you know that fiscal deficit are fresh loans and borrowings, now you know that, so total expenditure is included. Now what all receipts are there? Then you know that entire revenue receipts is there. Then from the capital receipts, except loan, what is there? Non-debt capped receipts. You get what? Fiscal deficit. That's fiscal deficit all about. Okay. So, are you clear with it? So, that's about fiscal deficit. Now, primary deficit. So, but if you ask me what is the most important one, it is fiscal deficit only. Primary deficit. It's very simple. Very simple. Fiscal deficit minus interest payment. What is primary deficit? From the what is fiscal deficit? The fresh loans, not loan, the fresh loan. For see, fiscal deficit is, I told you, fiscal deficit for 2017-18 means what? Fiscal deficit for, see, we talks in relation to that year. See, when we talk about fiscal deficit, we are talking from that financial year. Fiscal deficit for 2016-17 means what you have borrowed in that financial year. Fiscal deficit for 2017-18 means what amount of money you have taken borrowed from that particular year. So be very clear with it. Now imagine what is this primary deficit is all about. The government is saying that, just suppose you imagine that there is no interest payment at all. Just imagine. Then what will be the deficit? Then what will be the loan you have to, fresh loan you have to raise? That is. So if someone is coming and telling that, okay, I am going to clear all your debts, so the government will be very happy, because then the entire amount can be. So that is what is called as, if there is no interest payment component in it. I told you, out of the total expenditure, 1/4 of the total expenditure is for interest payment. Imagine if it is not there, that imaginary deficit is primary deficit. So these three are very important for you. That is, now tell me that for in India budget deficit is 0. Budget deficit is 0. Why? Be very clear. First one. Why? Total expenditure and total receipts is same. So there is no deficit. Revenue deficit. So you will hear only these terms: revenue deficit, fiscal deficit, and from in the newspaper you will not see any primary deficit. Only in the economic survey and budget you will see the term. So, but from the examination point of view, you need to know what is a primary deficit. Okay. Then other things like monetized deficit is not important now, but it's given in the material, which again it's a deficit, and this deficit is borrowed from the RBI or issuing by new currency. It's not that important. Just go and read the material. I'm repeating again. Revenue deficit is very important. Effective revenue deficit is very important. Fiscal deficit is important, and primary deficit. Now we'll solve a question on, and then we'll go for a lunch break. First, we will solve the 2015 question. First, we will solve the 2015 question, and then we will solve the very difficult question, question number 1, the 2016 question. Question number 3. Try to use the elimination method while solving question. Use elimination method. Anyway, those who are not knowing elimination method, we'll discuss in the afternoon session. First statement is correct. Yes or no? So you can eliminate. What you can eliminate? Choice. B can be eliminated. What about second statement? Introducing new welfare scheme results in increase expenditure. It will result in increase expenditure. So if the expenditure is increased, you can't reduce the deficit. Second statement is wrong. If you know that second statement is wrong, you can eliminate. You can eliminate only Delhi. You can eliminate D. Then read the third statement. Already this thing has eliminated. Now already we eliminated B. We are already eliminated by knowing first. Now you can eliminate only D. Now read the third statement. It is correct. So you can eliminate choice C. So without knowing fourth statement, you got the answer. Yes or no? So what is that fourth statement? Expanding industry. It is an expenditure. So if there is expanding industry means more expenditure. So obviously more expenditure means. Now answer the tough question, 2016 first question. Why everyone is smiling? Why is he a tough question? What? See, with lot of great effort, this person have created this question. What is he have done? He has taken the 2015 question. What he has done? Instead of expanding industry, he has changed reducing import duty. Then again, one difficult thing he has done. He has changed choice C and choice A. And hey, that thing also he has done. Don't complain. Look what he has done. Instead of A, he made it C, and C he made it, and he made a question. What is the answer? This is the advantage of which year it is, and which was that earlier question? 15. So actually this is also happening with UPSC. Don't complain. It's a good thing. Happy. Take it. Okay. So this is. But apply the same thing, apply the same method. Without fourth statement, you will get the answer. Be very clear with the concept. That's it. See, these are the, if you see the from public finance 2015 and 2016 question, both are very simple question. Yes or no? Is it a simple question? Yes, you are simple. You only solved it now. Okay. So that's why I told you, economy, it's not in relation to public finance. Every subject is like this. Every economy topics are like this. If you know the concept, and if you can apply certain rules, which we'll be discussing in the afternoon, we will get the answer correct. Will not make any mistakes. And that's why I told you, certain knowledge is not necessary to answer the question. It's what required that the expanding industry, before reaching there we got the answer. Before reducing import duty, we got the answer. This you have to follow it while giving your class test and model test, and in UPSC also. Try it. Okay. Now, one more small topic so that this will be over. We'll continue. We'll finish it off. We don't have time. Okay. Now the question and the current affair, which is related with it. I told you from coming financial year budget, there will not be any plan and non-plan. I have not discussed what is this plan and non-plan is all about. Now try to understand that this year, this financial year, which will be over by March 31st, 2017, is the end of our planning exercise. Already planning. Try to understand that now there is no planning commission, no National Development Council. It's all wind up. Now what we have is Nidhi Ayog. You know, everyone knows that. But the plan, the 5-year plan which we are started, is still continuing, and the present running year is the last annual plan period. So 12th 5-year plan will be over by March 2017. So that the government have decided, since the plan is over, no planning commission is also there. Next year onwards, there will be no plan and non-plan expenditure. So we'll discuss. So now already the concept is clear. What is that? Plan expenditure and non-plan expenditure. Plan expenditure and non-plan expenditure. It's very important for this year. Why? Why this plan and non-plan expenditure is important this year? So we'll discuss what is very simple. Plan and non-plan expenditure. See, now see the term. I told you, follow the rule. Your concept is clear from here. What is that? Expenditure. Now be very clear, we are talking about expenditure. We are not talking about receipts. So it's an expenditure. We are talking from union budget perspective. So it is the expenditure of the union government for a particular, we are talking from union budget point of view for a particular financial year. Now what is this plan expenditure? What is this plan expenditure and what is this non-plan expenditure? I told you we were having, it's a Nehruvian model of growth. We had a planned development. We had taken this concept from Soviet Union. We were having 5-year plans. So what we were doing it, we used to have 5-year plan. There will be a plan will be made for 5 years. And the government will say that in this 5-year plan, the importance is given to this area. We will spend money for this part. For example, the first 5-year plan have given importance to agriculture. So in that 5-year plan, in the first 5-year plan, the government have, so 5-year plan means how many budget? 5 annual budget. So the government will plan that for this 5-year plan, this much of money will be spent for the plan purposes, and the plan purposes will be decided by the government. And this 5-year plan, the amount will be given in the 5 annual budget. So any expenditure made for that year's 5-year plan will be considered as plan expenditure, and the rest of the expenditure, day-to-day expenditure and other, which is not a planned expenditure, will come as non-planned. So we can classify expenditure into two. Earlier in the budget there will be 2 types of expenditure. There is only one expenditure, total expenditure. From the total expenditure, if you add revenue expenditure, one is revenue expenditure and capital expenditure, we are thorough with it. The other is plan expenditure and non-plan expenditure. If you total it, again you will get, if you add plan expenditure and non-plan expenditure, what you will get? The total will be total expenditure. It's only for the, to know that how much fund is being used for planned purposes. Now tell me, interest payment. Interest payment, we will be planning it. The 5-year planning commission will come and plan that this much amount will be given for interest payment. No, it is a non-plan expenditure. Subsidies, non-plan expenditure. See, plan expenditure is that expenditure which is being utilized for the plan purposes. Basically, most of the plan expenditure will be for some welfare scheme expenditure or for creating some assets, or basically for some creating any assets. So be very clear. See, UPSC have given 3 times UPSC have asked question from non-plan expenditure. They are not asked question from planned expenditure, but they have asked question from 3 times they have asked question, and all the 3 questions are same, almost similar question. So be very clear with the concept what is plan expenditure and what is non-plan expenditure. So in the non-plan expenditure, interest payment, subsidies, pension and salary, grants, all those things. See, be very clear. If the grant is given for plan purposes, it will come under plan expenditure. So we will remove grant. So the defense expenses, subsidies, pension and salary, interest payment, all are what? Non-plan expenditure. All are what? Non-plan expenditure. It's there in the material, you just read it. But the important point is that when we talk about plan and non-plan expenditure, this is very, very, very important. The previous year plan, when we talk about plan expenditure, it's the expenditure only for the current plan, not for the previous plan. See, the present 5-year plan is, the 12th 5-year plan period is 2012 to 17, and that's why 17 will be over by 31st March 2017. The plan is from 2012 to 17 is the 12th 5-year plan, and it's the last 5-year plan. Okay, now when we talk about, when we talk about plan expenditure, there will be 11th 5-year plan. In the 11th 5-year plan, the government might have allocated certain vision and some fund have been planned. But if these, what I'm trying to say is, in the planned expenditure, only the current year current 5-year plan expenditure will be considered, not the previous year 5-year plan expenditure will be considered. Making it simple, in the planned expenditure, even in the planned expenditure, for present 5-year plan expenditure will be taken as plan expenditure. Previous 5-year plan expenditure will be taken as non-plan expenditure. Anything, even the assets created in the previous plan, if the government is spending for maintaining the previous 5-year plan, that will also be considered as non-plan expenditure. This is a very, very, very important point. What is that? When we talk about plan expenditure, it is the running 5-year plan, not for the previous plan. If it is for the previous plan, it will be taken as non-plan expenditure. So now this plan, it's there in the material, please go and read it, what is plan expenditure and non-plan expenditure. But more than anything is that when we solve this question, you will have more clarity. So we'll solve questions one by one. One is the last question, 95, the year 1995, question number 12. What is the answer? D. Answer question number 10. What is the answer? Then 2014 question. Question number 4. What is the answer? The advantage of solving previous year questions. Then answer this question, question number 11. What is the answer? Spend more and more on interest payment. Okay. See, while discussing fiscal deficit, there are 2 more questions on fiscal deficit. You can answer it, but this is one of the tricky question, but try to answer this question on fiscal deficit. Question number 6. Question number 6 on fiscal deficit. Apply elimination method and use your common sense also. See, actually the trick I will discuss in the afternoon also, but actually just keep this in mind. When you read this question, see the choice. See the choice. Choice is giving you any insight about the question? One statement is wrong. One statement is wrong in this question. Did you got that? Are you applying it when you? It's very clear. Now find out in this 4 statement which statement will be wrong. Statement 1 has to be wrong. See, why I am applying this technique, because I have not discussed what is FDI. We will be discussing only in external sector. See, with the present knowledge which we have learned today, we have to do that. So one statement is, because see, today you only know about public finance, you only know about capital budget, you only know about revenue budget. Only this much knowledge is there. With this knowledge, with knowledge of this, you just answer. Tell me that the choice. See, one. From the choice, it is clear that choice says that choice A 1, 2 and 3, choice B 2, 3 and 4, choice C 1, 2 and 4, choice D 3 and 4. In this choice there is no 1, 2, 3 and 4. So from that you can conclude either minimum 1 will be wrong, maximum 2, or other way maximum 2 statements are correct. Sorry, there are 2 statements, minimum is correct. Maximum it can be 3 statement. Now by applying logic, you just see it which one can be the. Now you see the this question on fourth one you know it. What is that? Disinvestment. Fourth one is disinvestment. So fourth one is, by doing so can you control fiscal deficit? Yes. Disinvestment results in See, now tell me, if you want to control fiscal deficit means reducing fiscal deficit. What do you mean by control fiscal deficit means? To reduce fiscal deficit. You can reduce fiscal deficit by 2 methods. One, reduce total expenditure, or increase the receipt component. So Disinvestment is non-debt capital receipts. So by increasing the non-debt capital receipts, fiscal deficit can be reduced. So fourth is correct. Then what about third one? What do you mean by downsizing of bureaucracy? Yes, sir, don't say like that. No, it's a question, UPSC question. What should I do? What do you mean by downsizing of bureaucracy? Reducing the number of staffs from bureaucracy. So once the bureaucracy is downsized, what will happen to salaries and pension? Salary will and future pension will come down. So the expenditure, the revenue expenditure will reduce. Yes or no? So 3 is also correct. So any doubt regarding 3 and 4? What happened? Now I am telling you, I will give you a very simple example. Imagine you all are you all are my staff. For me, I feel that okay, the expenditure is very high. I'll tell tomorrow, now this section, don't come from tomorrow onwards. What will happen to my budget? Next month onwards, my expenditure have come down. No need to borrow. Like that, government, what the government can do? Government will tell, okay, half of the bureaucracy, you are inefficient and corrupt. Go. So from the next month onwards, no need to pay the salary. Revenue expenditure from the salary component will come down. So by doing so I told, be very clear, either expenditure have to be reduced or receipt have to be increased. So by downsizing of bureaucracy will help in reducing revenue expenditure. Which part of revenue expenditure? The salary component. We are talking about union government. So 3 is correct, 4 is also correct. So if you know that 4 is correct, you can eliminate choice A. Then if you know that 3 is correct, you can eliminate choice C. Now from this, you know that statement 1 is the wrong statement. Did you got it? See, use your, that's what I am telling, this is the method you have to apply for prelims. What is your current knowledge? Your current knowledge has to be thorough. Your concept is clear. The topic which you are not aware of is not required here. Are you got this way? See, how you get it that first statement is wrong? How do you got that? How do you know that first statement is wrong? Without knowing about FDI. By knowing fourth statement and by knowing third statement, you get to know that first statement is wrong. How? Apply elimination method. See, by knowing that fourth is correct, what you have done? You cut the choice A. Why? 4 is not there. 4 is not there. So A is not the answer. So remove A. By knowing that third statement is correct, remove choice C. So A is not the answer, C is not the answer. Now what is left? Choice B and choice D. In choice B and choice D, there is no 1. What do you mean by that? 1 is wrong. Now the question is about the decider is the second statement. The decider is the second statement. Actually, what generally you people do now when you multiple this 3 statement or 4 statement. First statement FDI, I don't know. You are not looking into you are not trying to solve this way. So don't do it. Now the question is about, read the second statement. Privatization of higher educational institution. What do you mean by privatization? What do you mean by? It can be anything. Okay, what do you mean by privatization? What do you mean by privatization? Sorry? Yeah, see, what is government owned is government is selling it off. What is a government owned is privatization means it is a government owned. So, but it is talking about higher educational institutions. Just talking about whatever it is. See, most of the higher educational institutions, you know, top most higher educational institutions like IIT, IIM are government or not? Is it private run? No. The government can go for. Now, do you think that the government is getting lot of revenue from IIT and IIM? No. Now, if you privatize these type of higher education, see, I am not talking from, see, they are contributing so many things. I'm not, that's a different thing. We are talking from the budget point of view. Budget point of view. We are only studying public finance. So, privatization of higher education institution results in what? What will happen to the fiscal deficit? What will happen to the expenditure and receipt part? It will help in controlling the fiscal deficit. It will help in controlling the fiscal deficit. So, answer is. So, see, this is actually this is a method which I want to discuss in the afternoon session. We will discuss in detail regarding. See, these are the techniques you have to apply when you solve UPSC prelims question. Thereby, you will get the answer, and you will get 2 marks without too much of knowledge. The knowledge which you have is sufficient. Now, another question on fiscal deficit. Question number 9. See, this type of question is now not been asked now. This pattern of assertion reasoning question is now not at all asked. But since it is a UPSC question, that statement is important. Just identify whether that statement is correct or not. In India, budgetary deficit is 0. Fiscal deficit is greater than. Statement 1 is correct. Second statement, which is a very important statement. But see the year. See the year. Fiscal deficit is the borrowing from the RBI plus other liabilities of the government to meet. See, 99 that during that time the government used to borrow from everywhere, mainly from RBI also. Now RBI have stopped that period. That program is now. I will come to it. We'll discuss. Okay, but actually, if you ask me, fiscal deficit is the borrowing only. So that both the statement are from that year point of view. That statement are, see, now don't ask, sir, only, see, basically fiscal deficit is what? It is the borrowing only. So UPSC itself in the question have given the explanation. Now question number 8, which is a very simple question, go home and do it. I will not explain. What is fiscal, budget, revenue and primary deficit? You can easily answer it. But answer is A. Answer is A. Now the last question, and with this you will go for a lunch. The last topic, what is called as, already it's related with the deficit only, what is called as deficit financing. Very small topic. It's there in the concept itself. What is called as deficit? You know what is a deficit? What is a deficit? Deficit means when the expenditure is more than receipts. When we talk about union budget, when the union budget expenditure is more than the total receipts, we call it as deficit. Now when there is a deficit, what the government will do? The government have to borrow. So that is what is called as simple definition of deficit financing. But here when you hear the word deficit financing, try to understand. Normally, when earlier, now the government is not doing it, but earlier, whenever there is a deficit, government will approach RBI, the central bank of the country. The government will approach RBI for financing the deficit. And then what the RBI will do? RBI will print new currency for the government. This is what is happening in Venezuela. See, I am not going to that, but see, but earlier in India also used to be like that. The government used to, without any following any fiscal prudence, it used to make unnecessary expenditure, and they know that go to RBI and take loan from it, and the RBI will issue new currency. So the question is about the deficit financing is very simple. When we hear the word deficit financing, the government to finance the deficit borrow money from the RBI. RBI in turn, what it will do? It used to issue new currency. This is what is called as deficit financing. And basically, why the government what is the purpose of financing this? Why, for what purpose the government is asking the RBI to issue new currency? The government will say to the RBI, see, what all money I have collected through tax and non-tax or non-debt creating receipts, all have been used for revenue expenditure. All have been used for revenue expenditure. At least something has to be done for the people, for economic development of the country. I don't have any other option. You give me loan, Then RBI say what yaar, chalo give. Then so basically deficit financing is used by the countries or developing countries for what? For their economic welfare expenditure or for the economic development of the country. So this is all concept is all about. Why it's there in the material, please go and read it. And UPSC have asked a question on deficit financing. It's a very simple question. Please answer it. Answer this question number 5, which is a 2013 question. Answer is economic development. So we have solved all the question.